Concerns are rising about China's influence over academic freedom at American universities. Today, we look at Harvard's relationship with China and why it matters. NTD's Catherine Wen has the details.
The U.S. is stepping up its scrutiny of universities' foreign funding and contracts. The most recent case, a prominent Harvard professor was charged with hiding his ties to China's Thousand Talents plan. And that's not the only example of Beijing's influence on Harvard. In 2015, a talk on China's human rights issues was canceled because at the time, the university's president was meeting Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
He told me I have to cancel the talk because Harvard president was meeting Xi Jinping in Beijing.
A Chinese dissident and human rights lawyer had organized the event. Tang fled to the U.S. and was a visiting scholar at Harvard. A few weeks earlier, he got a call from Harvard Law School's vice dean.
And he also mentioned the programs that Harvard University cooperated with Chinese institutions.
The Washington Free Beacon reported that Professor William Alford said the decision was his own. Tang says many elite universities and individual scholars practice self-censorship, and this has become a threat to American academic freedom and free speech.
Because they didn't want to anger Chinese government, and they want further cooperation.
Bloomberg reports that since 2013, China has given donations and contracts to American universities totaling almost $1 billion. And Harvard is the top recipient, taking in $93.7 million. Every Harvard president since the 1990s has visited China. Harvard and the Chinese Communist Party and its institutions have built a wide scope of partnership programs. While most joint efforts focus on academic collaborations, one particular program has raised concerns and earned Harvard a Chinese nickname, which translates to the Chinese regime's second central party school. In the early 2000s, Harvard's Kennedy School of Government began training Chinese officials to help them, quote, address the ongoing challenges of China's national reform. Hundreds of Chinese officials, from mayors to provincial governors and vice ministers, took the training. Yet it appears there hasn't been any real sign of change in the regime. Among the Chinese officials who went through the training, some were later either investigated or sentenced for corruption. One was known for seizing a voice recorder from a reporter after he was asked a tough question, and another, a former justice official, said human rights lawyers will ruin the socialist rule of law. This former official and another who attended the training were also publicly called out for their involvement in the persecution of Falun Dafa, also known as Falun Gong. Falun Dafa is a Chinese spiritual practice. It has been persecuted by the communist regime for over 2 decades. Harvard graduate and spokesperson for the Falun Dafa Information Center, Zhang Erping, says the program risks legitimizing an authoritarian regime when it lends its name to Chinese officials.
Training the CCP officials, some of them probably involved in the policy of suppression of Falun Gong Christian Church or other dissident groups, they shouldn't be welcome here on campus.
Many institutions in the West assume that exposing leaders of the Chinese regime to the workings of a free society would help them accept Western norms, and they would eventually become more open and democratic. It has not succeeded. Beijing's lack of transparency during the pandemic has forced many countries to reassess the relationship with China. Zhang says it might also be time for Harvard to rethink its approach to the Chinese regime. Reporting by Catherine Wen, NTD News.